Steve Harvey went to pray in a humble church and discovered it was an unofficial counseling center for struggling veterans. His support created a proper PTSD treatment facility that saved countless lives and proved that sometimes the most important healing happens in the humblest places, where broken warriors gather to help each other find their way home from invisible wars. It was a gray Sunday evening in January 2024, and Steve Harvey was driving through a quiet neighborhood on the outskirts of Atlanta when he felt a familiar pull toward prayer and reflection. He had just finished a difficult week dealing with personal challenges and professional decisions that weighed heavily on his heart, and he needed a quiet place to seek spiritual guidance away from the public eye. Steve spotted Grace Community Chapel, a small, weathered brick church that looked like it had been serving the community for decades. The building was modest, with a simple wooden cross above the entrance and a hand-painted sign that read, "All Warriors Welcome, Safe Harbor for Those Who Served." The unusual wording caught Steve's attention, but he assumed it was just a church that honored military veterans. As Steve approached the building, he could hear muffled voices coming from inside, not the sound of a traditional church service, but rather the rhythm of quiet conversation and occasional emotional outbursts. Steve hesitated for a moment, wondering if he was intruding on a private gathering, but something drew him toward the door. Steve gently pushed open the heavy wooden door and stepped into a scene that immediately touched his heart and opened his eyes to a hidden crisis he had never fully understood. The church sanctuary had been rearranged from its traditional setup. Instead of rows of pews facing an altar, the space was filled with folding chairs arranged in several circles, with groups of men and women sitting together in intense emotional conversation. Most of the participants appeared to be veterans of various ages, from young men and women who looked like they had recently returned from Afghanistan or Iraq, to older veterans who bore the weathered faces of Vietnam or Gulf War service. In one circle, a young woman in her 20s was crying as she described nightmares that prevented her from sleeping. In another group, a middle-aged man was talking about his struggle with anger and how it was destroying his marriage. In a third circle, an elderly veteran was listening compassionately as a younger man described feeling like nobody understood what he had experienced overseas. At the front of the church, a man in his 50s, wearing a Vietnam veteran cap, was facilitating what appeared to be an informal support group session. His voice was gentle, but carried the authority of someone who had experienced combat and understood the invisible wounds that warriors carry home. Steve stood quietly in the back, not wanting to interrupt what was clearly an important and emotionally vulnerable gathering. As he listened, he began to understand that Grace Community Chapel had become an unofficial counseling center for veterans struggling with post-traumatic stress disorder and other mental health challenges related to their military service. "Remember," the facilitator was saying to the group, "what we share here stays here. We're not doctors or professional therapists, but we're brothers and sisters who understand what it's like to come home from war and feel like strangers in our own lives." Steve watched as veterans nodded in understanding, their faces showing a mixture of pain and relief at being in a place where their struggles were recognized and respected. That's when Pastor Michael Rodriguez, the church's minister, noticed Steve standing in the back and approached him quietly. "Sir, I'm Pastor Rodriguez. Are you here for our veteran support meeting? If you're not a veteran yourself, you're welcome to observe, but we ask that you respect the confidential nature of what's shared here. I'm Steve Harvey, Pastor, and I'm not a veteran, though I have deep respect for those who serve. I came here seeking a quiet place to pray, but I can see you're hosting something much more important. I don't want to intrude." Pastor Rodriguez's eyes widened slightly with recognition, but he maintained the protective stance of someone whose first priority was the well-being of the veterans in his care. "Mr. Harvey, you're welcome to stay if you'd like to understand what we do here. These men and women have been gathering in our church every Sunday evening for the past 3 years. Most of them can't afford professional therapy, and many don't feel comfortable in traditional clinical settings. Steve looked around the room at the veterans sharing their deepest struggles with each other, offering support, understanding, and hope to fellow warriors who had experienced similar trauma. Pastor Rodriguez, how many veterans participate in these sessions? We typically have 40 to 50 veterans each week, sometimes more. They come from all conflicts: Vietnam, Gulf War, Afghanistan, Iraq. Some are dealing with PTSD, others with depression, anxiety, substance abuse issues, or just the challenge of transitioning back to civilian life. And this is all volunteer-run? Yes, I facilitate some sessions, but most of our group leaders are veterans themselves who have found some stability and want to help others. We don't charge anything. We don't require paperwork or insurance, and we don't judge anyone, regardless of their discharge status or personal circumstances. Steve was quiet for a moment, watching a young veteran break down as he described feeling suicidal after his 3rd deployment, and seeing the immediate response from other veterans who surrounded him with understanding and support. Pastor Rodriguez, what do these veterans need that they're not getting elsewhere? Professional treatment, Mr. Harvey. Real therapy with licensed professionals who understand military trauma. Psychiatric care for those who need medication. Job training and placement services for those struggling with employment. Housing assistance for those who are homeless. Medical care for service-connected injuries that aren't being properly treated by the VA system. Why aren't they getting these services? Some can't navigate the VA bureaucracy. Others don't qualify for certain programs. Many can't afford private treatment, and some are too proud or too traumatized to seek help through official channels. For a lot of them, this church is the only place they feel safe enough to admit they're struggling. Steve looked at the veterans sharing their pain and finding strength in community. And he made a decision that would transform not just this small church gathering, but veteran mental health care in the entire region. Pastor Rodriguez, what would it cost to turn this into a proper professional treatment facility? Not to replace what you're doing, but to enhance it with licensed therapists, psychiatrists, and comprehensive services. Pastor Rodriguez stared at Steve in amazement. Mr. Harvey, are you serious? Completely serious. These men and women put their lives on the line for our country. The least we can do is make sure they get the mental health care they need when they come home. A proper facility with professional staff, group therapy rooms, individual counseling offices, psychiatric services, and support programs would probably cost several $1,000,000 to establish and fund for the first few years. Pastor Rodriguez, I want to build that facility, not just fund it temporarily, but create a permanent, professional treatment center specifically for veterans dealing with PTSD and other service-related mental health issues. The conversation was taking place during a brief break in the support sessions, and several veterans had overheard parts of their discussion. Word quickly spread through the room that Steve Harvey was considering establishing a professional treatment center for veterans. Mr. Harvey, a young veteran named Marcus Thompson approached them. Did I hear correctly that you want to build a treatment facility for veterans? I want to create a place where veterans can get professional mental health care in an environment that understands and respects military service. Marcus started crying. Sir, I've been coming to these church meetings for 2 years. It's the only thing that's kept me alive. But I know I need more help than peer support can provide. I just can't afford it, and the VA waiting lists are months long. Other veterans began gathering around Steve, sharing their stories and expressing gratitude for his willingness to help. Sarah Mitchell, a Marine veteran, spoke through tears. Mr. Harvey, I've been struggling with PTSD for 5 years since I came back from Afghanistan. This church saved my life, but I still have panic attacks, nightmares, and days when I can't leave my house. Professional help could give me my life back. James Crawford, a Vietnam veteran, added his voice. Sir, I've been dealing with trauma for 50 years. I raised my kids while fighting demons I couldn't name or understand. If you build this facility, you'll be saving not just veterans, but their families too." Steve was overwhelmed by the response and the obvious need that had been hiding in plain sight. "Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to know that this is going to happen. I'm going to build a comprehensive mental health treatment facility specifically designed for veterans. It will offer individual therapy, group counseling, psychiatric services, family therapy, job training, and whatever else you need to heal and thrive." The room erupted in emotional applause and tears of relief. 6 months later, the Steve Harvey Veterans Mental Health Center opened its doors in a beautiful purpose-built facility just blocks from Grace Community Chapel. The center featured individual therapy offices, group counseling rooms, psychiatric consultation spaces, family therapy areas, recreational therapy facilities, and a peaceful meditation garden designed specifically for veterans seeking quiet reflection. The center was staffed by licensed therapists who specialized in military trauma, psychiatrists experienced in treating PTSD, social workers who understood veteran-specific challenges, and peer counselors who were veterans themselves. Pastor Rodriguez continued to facilitate the Sunday evening support groups at Grace Community Chapel. But now, veterans had access to professional treatment throughout the week at the new center. During the opening ceremony, Steve spoke about the inspiration for the facility. "I went to a small church seeking prayer and found something much more important. I found warriors who were fighting a different kind of battle, one that couldn't be won with weapons or military tactics, but only with understanding, professional care, and community support." Marcus Thompson, the young veteran who had first approached Steve at the church, spoke at the ceremony as a representative of the veteran community. "Mr. Harvey didn't just build us a treatment facility. He gave us hope. He showed us that our invisible wounds matter, that our struggles are real, and that we deserve the same level of care and attention that we would receive for physical injuries." The Steve Harvey Veterans Mental Health Center has since treated over 1,500 veterans and their family members. The center's innovative approach, combining professional treatment with peer support and community connection, has become a model for veteran mental health care nationwide. Today, the center operates with a zero waiting list policy, ensuring that any veteran in crisis can receive immediate care. The facility also trains other communities to establish similar programs and advocates for better veteran mental health resources at the national level. Steve keeps a photo from that first Sunday evening at Grace Community Chapel in his office, not as a reminder of his generosity, but as a reminder that sometimes the most important discoveries happen when we're seeking something else entirely, and that answering a call to prayer can lead us to answer calls for help that we never knew existed. Grace Community Chapel still holds its Sunday evening veteran support groups, but now veterans graduate from those sessions to professional treatment at the center, and many return as peer counselors to help newly struggling veterans find their way to healing. The transformation of a humble church gathering into a comprehensive treatment facility proves that when spiritual calling meets human need, miracles happen not just for individuals, but for entire communities of people who have sacrificed everything to serve others. If this powerful story of veteran mental health, community support, and the transformation of informal care into professional treatment moved you, please subscribe and hit that thumbs up button. Share this video with someone who needs to understand that veteran PTSD is real, treatable, and deserving of our best resources and attention. Have you or someone you know struggled with PTSD or other service-related mental health challenges? Let us know in the comments how we can better support our veterans. And don't forget to ring that notification bell for more stories about honoring those who served and ensuring they get the care they earned through their sacrifice.